I have nothing, only a handful of meal in a jar and a little oil in a jug. I am now gathering a couple of sticks so that I may go home and prepare it for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die." Elijah said to her, "Do not be afraid. Go and do as you have said. But first make me a little cake of it and bring it to me, and afterward make something for yourself and your son. For thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, the jar of meal will not be emptied, and the jug of oil will not fail until the day that the Lord sends rain on the earth." She went and did as Elijah said, so that she as well as he and her household ate for many days. The jar of meal was not empty, neither did the jug of oil fail, according to the word of the Lord that he spoke by Elijah. After this, the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, became ill. His illness was so severe that there was no breath left in him. She then said to Elijah, "What have you against me, O man of God? You have come to me to bring my sin to remembrance and to cause the death of my son." But he said to her, "Give me your son." He took him from her bosom, carried him up to the upper chamber where he was lodging, and laid him on his own bed. He cried out to the Lord, "O Lord my God, have you brought calamity even upon the widow with whom I am staying by killing her son?" Then he stretched himself upon the child 3 times and cried out to the Lord, "O Lord my God, let this child's life come into him again." The Lord listened to the voice of Elijah. The life of the child came into him again, and he revived. Elijah took the child, brought him down from the upper chamber into the house, and gave him to his mother. Then Elijah said, "See, your son is alive." So the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in your mouth is truth."
Okay, thank you. So we have basically two different parts to this story. There's the first part, where she's feeding him, and the food never gives out. And then we have the part where her son gets ill, and she gets angry. And it's interesting to me that they ate for days with this tiny bit of food she had left, but it wasn't until he revived her son that she says, "Now I know that you're a man of God." So what are these two different parts? What do you think they have in common? The two different parts of the story. It's really sort of two different stories, but it's obviously the same woman. Anything?
Miracles.
Miracles, yeah. It's also interesting to me that in the first part, the Lord says to him that I've commanded a widow there to feed you, and yet she doesn't seem to be expecting him. He says, I'm gonna, I've commanded her to feed you, but she doesn't seem to know that she's been commanded to feed him. But she still does it. And then of course the food never gives out. So there are two miracles in either one. How do they differ? How do you think they differ?
Is an act of faith.
Yes.
And that-
Yes. Which one?
Well, the first one, I don't think it's a perception of her is an act of faith to feed Elijah. But the second one is a promise of healing that she believes can be fulfilled. But it's her act of faith. It's like some of the other parables in the Bible. It's like your faith has saved you. So I think
I think that's true. I think that she has some reason to believe in him initially because the food never gives out. But the true act of faith is, she comes to him and seems to think he can do something about the situation.
On the other hand, she sounds kind of mad at it.
She's mad.
She's mad.
Is she mad at him or is she mad at God?
Yes. Both. You come to me to bring my sin to remembrance at the cause of the death of my son.
Yeah. I
well,
think
it's a
she's
question of faith, isn't it? I mean, it's what do you want of me? What are you asking me? You asked me to go and you feed this man that I don't know is a prophet, but is. And then you punish me, and so what's going on here?
Oh, I agree.
And it's interesting to me as well that in the beginning, when she says, all I have is this little bit of food and we're going to eat it and then we're going to die. And, and then later on, when her son actually starts to die, she's angry at him. I mean, it's kind of an interesting, she was sort of resigned to the fact that they were not going to survive this famine. Then they do survive the famine, and now she's angry because her son is dying from something else. It's kind of a,
One was expected, right? And she expected to die because she had no food. And the second one is that he's living, and that's not expected.
Um, well, to me, when she gave him that food in the beginning, she didn't have, she knew she was gonna die and her son was gonna die, so why not share?
right.
There's just that attitude. And it's kind of a, not so much a fatalist, but just let go is what she was doing. And when her son was dying, to me, it was again, let go. I don't feel the anger that y'all are talking about. I feel more this is what's going to happen. And I feel like that the story is about that nothing is planned. Nothing is, God doesn't have life happens. And your acceptance of it or your dealings with it is how it's going to work out for you or not work out for you. Whether the son lived or died is not really the question in this. It's how she accepted it is the way I feel. Is that?
Well, and I'm thinking about the hope that came to her, came back to her when the food did not give out. And so suddenly when her son dies, it's almost like you've given me something to hope for, and then you've just stolen it away from me again. I don't understand.
We don't
And
always
that's
understand.
how this system in the world we live works. Sometimes, it seems like we got seasons of really generous goodness, and then we have seasons of drought, if I had to say something like that. And I think we all stand in that moment with God where we go, oh, we don't understand. And maybe that's part of it. The anger comes from you've given me something to hope for and now you've stolen it. It feels that way.
Is that was she okay? It's just, was she really angry or was she just
Resigned.
resigned, expressing her well,
Can it be both?
yeah, it can.
Well, she says to Elijah, what do you have against me, O man of God? You have come to me to bring my sin to remembrance and to cause the death of my son. So, I mean,
Well,
that's kind of angry.
I don't know. I just kind of read it a different way, but
Yeah, well,
In the first story, a widow would have no choice but to do what a man told her. Remember the time.
true.
that's true.
Gathering sticks. And some dude comes up and says,
Some stranger.
"Feed me."
Yeah, I think that, she had so little to lose at that point. I mean, she was expecting not to survive the famine. And then she did. So one of the things that the author raises is that when God is trying to punish Ahab with this famine, it isn't really Ahab that suffers, it's the poor. And that seems to be true so often. And it's interesting because she raises this question of a government shutdown, which of course we are getting ready to face. And having been a government employee during a shutdown, I can tell you it's very and a very anxious time for government employees.
Challenging.
It's very challenging. You don't know how long it's going to last. You have no income during that time. And if it's a couple of weeks, you're probably fine. But if it goes into months, you could be in trouble. And although I read something in the paper the other day that said government employees always get paid at the end, that is actually not a guarantee. It's up to them when they go back to work to decide whether they're going to pay everybody who's been laid off during that period of time. So, and a lot of the people who are required to work during a government shutdown are working without pay. If you're military, you get paid, but if you're a Justice Department lawyer and you're involved in something major that you have to keep working because the courts expect you to, you may or may not ever get paid for that time. So I do think that there are other, can you think of other examples where that's true, where somebody acts in a way that person they're actually acting against?
Well, she was given hope, right? I mean, she
Yeah.
had nothing to hope for. She was given hope and then it was taken away. Just, okay, what's going on here? You know, you give me hope and then you take it away. What's the deal?
Actually, another thing in there, as I was listening to the story, it was, is Elijah a man of God? We don't know that. She doesn't know that. The object, almost the object of the parable is that sort of show that Elijah is a man of God because he brings the child back to life. And that's one of the statements. Now I know you're a man of God. But she didn't know that to start. We didn't know that to start. That maybe we did because we read enough stuff. We know about Elijah and chariots of fire and all that stuff. But I think that's one of the objects in this parable. We've been talking about some of them, but there's another one here. And this is a sort of an epiphany for that lady. She really didn't know.
Well, she had some clue when the food never gave out, right? Now, she didn't know when she first started feeding him, but as we said, she didn't really have much to lose in that situation. But, you know, it's kind of her calling, his calling, to say, what are you doing with my child?
Yeah, we're often put in positions where we're asked to make decisions that we can't see necessarily the ramifications of. Or that we haven't yet imagined the ramifications of. Maybe it's an impulsive decision, or maybe it's a very carefully discerned decision. There are consequences to what we elect to do. And I think those often are impactful to people we don't even know. And it may be the kind of coffee that we drink, it may be where we go to shop, but all of those things have ramifications in our world these days. Even if we want to say that we're not connected globally, I think we are in denial.
Very true. Can anybody think of another example, though, I mean, she gives the example of the government shutdown. Can you think of other things that actually don't end up hurting the people that they're aimed at, but end up hurting a lot of other people? Anybody got any other examples of that?
I know this might sound silly, but the road systems, when they're putting in new roads, they'll go through or building in new communities, they'll go through and could destroy things where I don't think the thought pattern of what is happening to that community that they've destroyed is happening. I think that
Ecosystem.
well, for years and years ago in the 60s, there was this gorgeous area where they put in the stadium. And it was the most beautiful old houses, and it was on bluffs, and it was just gorgeous. But the hippies and the blacks and all of those had moved in. And so city of St. Pete decided to destroy it. Well, now it would be, if they had left it, it would be a showplace for the whole world because it was so gorgeous and so unusual. And it's gone. I mean, you know, everything about it, and all those families that live there, they've just dissipated, and they were a great community. So
I think sometimes they make those decisions thinking that the people that they are hurting have less of a political voice than other people. And so it's more intentional. It's the path of least resistance people. Okay, anybody else have anything else they want to say about this particular story? We'll move on to the widow with the oil. Anybody have any other comments about this widow? Okay, let's move to the widow with the oil. Will somebody be willing to read that? 2 Kings? Sure.
Now the wife of a member of the company of prophets cries to Elijah, your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord, but a creditor has come to take my 2 children as slaves. Elijah said to her, what shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in your house? She answered, Your servant has nothing in the house except a jar of oil. He said, go outside, borrow vessels from all of your neighbors, empty vessels, and not just a few. Then go in, shut the door behind you and your children, and start pouring into all these vessels. When each one is full, set it aside. So she left him and shut the door behind her and her children. They kept bringing vessels to her, and she kept pouring. When the vessels were full, she said to her son, bring me another vessel. But he said to her, there are no more. Then the oil stopped flowing. She came and told the man of God, and he said, go sell the oil and pay your debts, and you and your children can live on the rest.
Okay, so this is, I mean, there's some similarities between these two stories, right? I mean, there's they both had very little and it just never gave out. I mean, that's obviously an overlap, if you will. But what differences do you see between these two stories?
Well, this,
She asked for help and she knew she was going to a man of God. Whereas in the first story, he just shows up and demands food and she's willing to do it, you know. Any other differences between the two stories you can think of?
She had faith to begin with.
She had faith to start. Yeah. Anything else you can think? What about?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, it's, the thing is, this says, how shall I help you? Or here the diving deeper, but to me, the question was, what do you have?
Yes.
Because what do you have brings, what do you have that you can use yourself? That, you know, it's like giving the man the fish instead of teaching him how to fish.
Okay.
And I think that that's focusing on what you've got to use yourself first. And I think that's something that God turns to us a lot of times and says, again, yes, I can help you, but what do you have that you can pull out of your own faith and bring forth first?
I think that's, and the author talks about that, you know, you may think you don't have any resources, but you have, everybody has some resources. If it's just your time, if it's your money, if it's your, you know, whatever, you have resources, and it doesn't take a lot of resources to actually produce miraculous results. Can you think of any other kinds of things that you might do with just a small, or that maybe not you personally, but you know, that people can do with something small? She brings up the microloan situation, and that's remarkable. I put in, I think, $20 probably 15 years ago, and the way those micro loans work, in case you don't know, is that as they're paid back, they use that money to fund another one. I've never put in more than $20, and I can't tell you how many different things I've gotten about what they've done with my money. So I think that's a good example. Can you think of anything else like that?
It's interesting. I mean, I'm thinking about the Frank Capra film, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
And it stops this young person or this man from jumping off a bridge, or saves a young person, by showing him moments in his life where he's made a difference in somebody else's life, and the extrapolation of how that's affected the ring of people around him and the town where he grew up, and how it's changed hearts. And I don't think we are fully aware of how many times, by simply passing through and being present in somebody else's life, that we've made a difference. Or if we consider those people who don't realize they've made a difference in our own lives. And that's a powerful way of considering what it means to move through this life with grace and with generosity. And that where we are, because of where God is, we are able to give in our evidence, whether it's time or thought or consideration or talent, or simply paying for the car behind you at Starbucks, if that's what you are drinking today. Or simply, you know, leaving, what's the places where you can leave a receipt where a paid lunch is waiting for somebody that's hungry. I mean, those things that we have the ability to do. We do. So we can leave that ticket for someone next week. It's that small stuff that I think that we don't measure.
And I don't think sometimes it even has to be that. I think sometimes if you just tell someone good morning and smile at them, or say, I really like your dress, that if you don't realize what you've done, you might have just made somebody's day. You've affirmed that they're there and that you acknowledge them. And maybe they haven't had that acknowledgement. You can be positive.
Yes.
I have this unwanted elevator ministry in my building. I don't even want to get on the elevator anymore because it seems like every time I get on there, there's somebody that wants to talk to me or just looks like they need to talk. And one day a lady was on there and she looked really perplexed. I said, what's going on with you, Gladys? And she said, I just don't know what I am. And I said, I know what you are. You're a child of God. And she looked at me and her face just lit up. And I think she spread it around the building because now every time I turn around, somebody's coming to me for advice or just a kind of, it's kind of interesting. But, you know, it's gotten to be kind of fun.
I like that. I don't want an elevator.
It always happens in the elevator, it seems like.
Captive audience.
I guess.
I've found great joy in telling new mothers how lovely their children have acted in a restaurant or
Yes.
anything, just whether they have or not.
Yeah.
Just saying that, watch the mother's face, just.
That was something my husband always did. When we go out to dinner and there was a family there with kids, he always made a point of stopping to say, your kids were really great. It was a pleasure to have dinner next to them, you know. It always amazed me and the parents would get so undone.
I volunteer every Saturday feeding the homeless. And I only intended to go once. And that was about a year and a half ago, maybe almost 2 years ago. And what struck me, two things. One was after the first day, all of these people came up and said to me, thank you. We are so grateful that you're here and God bless you. Every one of them has something to say about God bless you. All of them. And it's not prompted in any way. And so, you know, I have a little name tag that says Steve on it. They stopped calling me Steve and they call me line boss. Because I'm the first step that they go to, first names only, and we give them a little sticker with their name on it so that we can, you know how many people are being served. And then they go through the line, but they don't get food unless they have a sticker. So, I mean, that struck me. And then the second thing is, years ago, I was in the middle of a divorce. My oldest daughter was severely ill. She had to have a brain surgery. And, and I lost my job. And so I said, you know, it's like the widow. I'm saying, okay, now what? And I was down to my last $100 or $200 mortgage due, car payments due, electric, water, sewer, all of that stuff is due. And I'm saying, okay, now what? And it wasn't the closest friends that I went to. And I asked them for help. It was the people that I thought that I knew the least, that I had made some impact in their lives and in their businesses, that came to me and said, I have a job for you. So, I mean, I talked to the pastor and he said, what am I going to do? And he says, go home and pray about it. You'll be fine. And I'm thinking, oh my God. He said, well, that's a good start. Oh my God. And so he said, well, within a week I had jobs.
Well, as some of you all know, I do the Kindness Matters walk, and as some of you know, we were warned off by the police that we were going to be arrested if we kept doing it. And this was not this past Saturday, a week ago Saturday. And they were unable to tell us what code, ordinance, statute, whatever we were violating. We were just told, I mean, they told us they thought it had something to do with crowd size, but they weren't really sure. So it wasn't that they didn't, that they purposefully didn't tell us, they didn't know. They had been told to come out and give us a warning that we couldn't do this anymore. And if we came back, we would be arrested for trespassing. So, we went to work this week and we tried to talk to people at the police. We tried to talk to several city councilors. Ultimately, it happens that the city attorney is a friend of mine. I called her and I just, I left her a message and just said, I just want to know what we're violating, what statute we're violating, what code, what ordinance we're violating. We were also told by somebody in the mayor's office, they thought it was a health code. We were told by the police, they thought it was crowd size, but nobody had a definitive answer. And of course, we wanted the answer not just to hold them accountable, but to figure out how we could adjust what we were doing so that we were no longer in violation of whatever that provision was. So interestingly, Andrea, my friend who's the city attorney, Andrea Zellman, all of you should continue to support her, called me on Wednesday and said, I've looked into it and it's all a big misunderstanding. You all may continue. So we went back out this past Saturday. We did do things a little bit differently. For one thing, we didn't wear our t-shirts that said kindness matters, and we took a slightly smaller group of people when we went. And we were met by, we had 3 bicycle cops that followed us the whole way, but they were very kind and very nice, didn't stop us or anything. But the main thing, the whole point of the story was the absolute gratitude that we got from our friends. We've been doing this for almost 10 years, so we know a lot of these people pretty well. And, but they were ecstatic to see us. They were confident. Some of them just said, did not think you would be here. And of course, they didn't know that we weren't risking arrest to come. They didn't know what we'd done during the week. They just knew we showed up and they were so grateful. And I think that's just a question of, seeing the unseen. I mean, so many people, it's like, if you've been to church this morning, the story of Lazarus and it's the question of how many times do you walk by somebody in need? And as you say, all you have to do is say, hello, how are you? Or just acknowledge their presence. And it really is such a gift. Whether you're handing out water or food or just acknowledging that they're there. I think that's an important lesson.
They did the same thing to our group. The police showed up with 3 cars and an ambulance and a fire truck and they were threatening arrest and all that. And so most of you all know I deal with government all the time. So I just went up and asked them, as Kim said, I say, okay, which law are you enforcing? I want to know which, and then they started telling me, well, it came from the city attorney. And I said, okay, that's fine. I've got her number here. I'll call her. And then they said, well, it came from the chief of police. I said, I got his number too. You want to call them? I'll be happy to talk to him. Oh, it came from Captain so-and-so. And I said, that's fine. Got his number too. Which one do you want me to talk to? And then they said, well, we're gonna call and find out what's going on and we're gonna issue a citation. I said, okay, what ordinance are you gonna cite me? Which one? We're not out on the street. We're on private property. We have insurance. We have an agreement. We have a general lease agreement to do that. So what are you asking? What are you telling me that we're violating? And they said, well, we'll get back to you. But they did leave the cars there, and that anybody that got off and got onto public property, they threatened to arrest. It was pretty, aggressive, very aggressive. And Tim and I talked about this the other night. And I, obviously offered to help if they run into any more problems. So anyway, it's just interesting to see where they go with this. And I think they're talking about the state statute that says you can't stay on public property. And they're more concerned about people staying overnight than they are feeding. So we end up serving about 170 people every Saturday. And we're located at the Longshoreman building on their parking lot.
Are they hassles when they come or when they leave?
They just come up when you're gathered. They come up I mean, it's not a passive event. They scream up pretty fast. And it frightens the people.
It would frighten me.
It frightens the homeless and, and, people start to get nervous and they scatter. And I guess those officers are not used to dealing with somebody who knows what their powers are. But they have to give you a reason, as Kim said. They can't just say that they're gonna cite you and, they say they're gonna arrest you. I say, what are you gonna arrest me for? And they don't know, but I don't know what the mix-up is, but it's fairly regular in the last couple of weeks. They
Yeah.
backed off recently.
Yeah. There's a big move to get the homeless out of downtown, and they're trying to figure out legal ways to do that. So far, they haven't come up with a justification.
Well, on Thursday this past week, they said, well, we want to send you to Tampa Hope. Well, Tampa Hope is not the solution because you go through a whole intake process. You go through, you have to be qualified and all of that. There's still a whole group that cannot obtain housing. And those are the ones that we're serving. And as I said, they are extremely grateful. And it's amazing to me the number that will say thank you. We have a little prayer table, and so they go to the prayer table. We have Tampa General involved, so they do health screening, and clothes and shoes and food, and we have a counseling little group that's over there, and it's pretty comprehensive. But it's for a couple hours on Saturday morning, and as I said, I didn't intend to stay, and it seemed like it's more like I can't stop now.
It's addictive.
I can't, as much as I would say, okay, Saturday morning, I don't really want to get up that early and go, but I do it, and they are so grateful.
Okay, let's move on to the maid of Naaman's wife. Who would be willing to read that for me? 2 Kings 5 verses 1 through 15. Thank you.
But I got my glasses, so I do my best. Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Aram, was a great man and in high favor with his master, because by him the Lord had given victory to Aram. The man, though mighty warrior, suffered from a skin disease. Now the Arameans on one of their raids had taken a young girl captive from the land of Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. He said to her mistress, if only my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his skin disease. The Naaman went in and told his Lord just what the girl from the land of Israel had said. And the king of Aram said, go then, and I will send along a letter to the king of Israel. He went, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 1,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of garments. He brought the letter to the king of Israel, which read, when this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you my servant Naaman, that you may cure him of his skin disease. When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, am I God to give death or life? But this man sends word to me to cure a man of his skin disease. Just look and see how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me. But when Elijah, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent a message to the king. Why have you torn your clothes? Let him come to me, that he may learn that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman came with his horses and chariots and hailed at the entrance of Elijah's house and halted. Elijah sent a messenger to him saying, go, wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean. But Naaman became angry and went away, saying, I thought that for me he would surely come out and stand tall in the name of the Lord his God, and would wave his hand over the spot and cure the skin disease. Are not Abana and the rivers of Damascus better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? He turned and went away in rage. But his servant approached him and said to him, Father, if the prophet had commanded you to do something difficult, would you not have done it?
How much more when all he said to you was, wash and be clean? So he went down and immersed himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the Lord for the man of God. His flesh was restored, and the flesh of a young boy, and he was clean. Then he returned to the man of God, and he and all his company, who came and stood before him, and said, Now I know there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. Please accept the present from your servant. I think that's it.
That's it, yeah. Okay, so this story, kind of like the first one we talked about, kind of has two different parts. And this is supposed to be, women of the Old Testament. So the first part involves a woman, the maid of the wife of Naaman. And then the second part is really when he does go to Elijah, and Elijah doesn't even address him personally, which kind of ticks him off, I think. And then the servants intercede at that point. So what do these two parts, again, what are the two parts do you seem to have in common, and how do they differ?
I think the servant girl had courage because she was just the servant to Naaman's wife. And yet she had the courage to say, if only my Lord, and she obviously didn't mind Naaman's, Naaman could meet this man.
She had everything to lose
She took.
and nothing
And
to
she was
gain.
only 10 years old. I mean, that just amazes me that she had that much courage at her age.
Yeah, to make a suggestion like that, which also evidences her faith, right? I mean, she clearly was acting in faith because she knew in her heart that he could be cured, that Elijah was capable of curing him because she trusted in Elijah. What about the servants? Do you think they were acting out of faith? Do you?
They kind of manipulated him. But doesn't it speak to the relationship that Naaman and Naaman's wife have with the people that they work with that are not necessarily treated by everybody as somebody valuable? But it speaks to the idea that maybe they listened to their servants as people who had valuable counsel. And otherwise Naaman would not have listened to any of the servants. He would
Right.
not have made the effort. So I think it's something about the ability to listen and the ability to feel confident that if I speak, somebody would value what I have to say. So there's that exchange.
So that's something they have in common. That she as a servant was listened to, and then his other servants were listened to as well. To me, that's something they have in common. To me, and this throw this out there for your comment, she, I think, acted out of faith. I felt like the servants were acting sort of more out of common sense. I mean, why not try it? I mean,
Yeah.
what have you got to lose? As they say, if he'd ask you to do something really difficult, wouldn't you do it? And I think he was acting more initially anyway, out of a bit of pique, that he was mad that Elisha had not even bothered to come out and talk to him. Why should I do what he says when he hasn't even bothered to address me personally?
I think the interesting part there is that, did you want something more difficult? Or, I mean, I told you how to get this cured, and you want me to come down and you want me to wave my hands and pray over you instead of just going in bathing 7 times? Certainly wouldn't happen in modern times. You'd pray your skin would come off.
I thought it reminded me a whole lot of the Emperor's New Clothes.
Yeah.
I loved, I thought, I wonder if you could write this story for children again as that concept where, the innocent are the ones who go, just, don't just be who you are. I don't know. It just struck me as that.
And also maybe the lesson would be, when you know you can help, you help. And maybe a second part of the lesson being, how many times has our arrogance kept us from being blessed?
Yeah.
Humility.
Yeah.
Naaman didn't happen to have.
Yeah.
So it's an example of why he got in front of himself. And the servants used common sense and said, What did you want? Something more difficult? Go do it.
We're about to run out of time. One thing that, I mean, the author talks about that good advice often comes from unexpected people. And, you know, can you think of any examples? And I sort of threw in, have you talked to any children lately? I mean, you know, it's always amazing to me when I do some substitute teaching and I walk into kindergarten and they'll say, why is your hair white? And I'm like, oh God, here we go. You know?
It is.
Because it is, you know, because I quit dyeing it, you know, what do you want me to say?
You want it.
But, you know, it is interesting that I mean, you do hear truth from some people that you're not expecting to hear it from, and it's worth listening to. So I'm not sure what time we're supposed to be ending now, right?
Now.
Yeah, well,
5 minutes.
So we're not.
so we'll just real quickly, I don't know, the last one really is not, I don't think we necessarily need to read it because I think we can sum it up because I think that the point of the last story really is the fact that there was, I mean, the reason she included it was because there was a female prophet. And in this story, you know, he sends, the king sends 5 people to figure out what he can do because of they found this new scroll and how can he, what does it mean and what can he do? And he turns to these 5 advisors and they turn to a female prophet and they don't give it, there's no explanation really of why they picked her. But there's also no explanation that she's a lesser or greater prophet than other prophets that existed at the time. And I think that from the author's perspective, it was, you know, did you even know that there were female prophets in the Old Testament? And she goes into a discussion about the role of women in the church and how people have tried to construe that to explain why there shouldn't be women in the church. And other people have said, well, this shows why there should be women in the church. So it's that kind of a story. So that we really are running out of time. There are 2 other stories in this chapter that I didn't cover. One of which I just wouldn't have touched with a 10-foot pole. The other was just, I was trying to come up with 4 to cover in the time that we had. So
Which one wouldn't you touch?
Gomer,
Wow.
that's a really hard story. Yeah. But anyway, I appreciate y'all being here. John, would you close us in prayer?
Gracious God, we're grateful for this time together, grateful for the gift of your word and our continued exploration of it, the way it shapes our lives even today. Lord, we're grateful for the gift of these women throughout scripture and the stories that still speak to us today as well. Lord, be with us as we continue this day. Walk with us this day and the week ahead. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you, Kim.
My mother always couldn't understand that part about